Welcome to the Three Wise Men of Divorce, Money, Psych, and Law podcast. Sit down with the California divorce experts, financial divorce consultant Mark Hill, psychologist Scott Weiner, and attorney Shawn Weber for a frank and casual conversation about divorce, separation, co-parenting, and the difficult decisions real people like you face during these tough times. We know that if you are looking at divorce or separation, it can be scary and overwhelming. With combined experience of over 70 years in divorce and conflict management, we are here for you and look forward to helping by sharing our unique ideas, thoughts, and perspectives on divorce, separation, and co-parenting.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Three Wise Men of Divorce. We have an interesting subject we're going to be chatting about today, and that subject is guaranteed ways to have a miserable divorce. And we, each of us from our own standpoints, mine from the financial, Scott from the emotional, and from the legal side, Shawn, have all seen mistakes made throughout the divorce process. So, Shawn, why don't you lead this off with a couple of your favorites?
Okay. All right. This is based on actual experience. So if you really want to have a terrible time, hire the cheapest attorney you can find. And the reason why that will guarantee a miserable divorce is that you do get what you pay for. And you know, better yet, go to the yellow pages. Oh, do we even have yellow pages anymore? Go to Google.
Do we have pages?
We don't even have pages. My kids
Yellow
don't
Google.
know what the yellow pages are. But go to Google and just search cheap divorce attorney. And you'll get some people to show up at the top. Make sure you click the very first person that shows up.
Do you click on the ad or on the...
the ad, the one that they paid money to get you to click on it.
There you go.
and look them up. And the best ones are the ones that do all kinds of different areas of law. And they'll do trust and estates and criminal law and bankruptcies. And they'll have this whole list. At the very bottom, it'll say, and divorce. That's your guy or gal.
Okay.
Especially if their picture has a bit of a scowl on it. You know, if they're scowling on their online profile, or if they just have a crappy website, no picture at all, that's even better.
So that's a guarantee, huh?
That's a guarantee for a miserable divorce. Don't get any kind of referrals to your attorney. Just make sure it's the cheapest one you can find.
Do you have any other specific legal advice for on the legal side of how to get it just as wrong as you can?
Well, you know, I mentioned the guy or gal that is a dabbler, I call them. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they hung their own shingle because they couldn't get hired anywhere, or they weren't good enough to really build a strong practice. So it's just they have a cheap looking website. They have really cheap fees. Their retainer is really low. And they're going to have this list of all these things that they'll do. They're like general practitioners, a jack of all trades and a master of none. And they'll have and divorce, very last thing.
So not a good idea.
And they won't know what they're doing. You know, there are what you really want to have if you want to have a good divorce, you know, which we're kind of discouraging on this week's program. We're talking about terrible divorces. But if you want to have a good divorce, you want to find a certified specialist in family law. And they're actually, you know, at least if it's California, somebody that's all they do is family law work, because it really is like specialist work. You wouldn't go to a cardiologist to get brain surgery, for example.
So question, if I don't want the cheapest, do I want the most expensive?
Well, that's the other tip to have a miserable divorce, is to find the most expensive attorney. Because there's a certain threshold, and it's different for every jurisdiction, right? We talk to people, you know, this show goes out to people all over the world, right? But there's kind of this threshold point where you're spending too much on your attorney, and all you're doing is you're paying for that beautiful office they're in. And I don't know that you're necessarily getting a better return on your investment by buying the person at the great big firm at the high-rise building with the amazing office and the really expensive car and the very, very high retainer. That's not necessarily going to give you a better outcome. I find that there's kind of a midpoint.
But you want someone who specializes purely in family, so
Yeah.
a certified specialist. You want somebody who I believe that you resonate with.
I think there's another element too. I think you want to actually get referrals from other people as opposed to this scattershot method. Other people who've been divorced, other people, other attorneys that work in other areas, if you ask them, who do you think of as a really fine family law practitioner? Who do you think of? Lawyers know each other. They do.
Yeah. Word of mouth is really important.
Yep, that's so much better. Yep.
And I would look for somebody, if you wanted to have a good divorce, which, it's marginal on this show because we're talking about terrible divorces. But if you want to have a good divorce, you also want to get an attorney that would work in alternate dispute resolution.
What do you mean by that?
So, a no court option. And if you talk to them, they have no out of court options. You might want to ask them why, because a good lawyer will try to settle their case. I would ask them what their settlement rate is, not what their win rate is.
How do you even define a win in family?
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. I've had people call me, well, how many cases have you won? And I'm like, they all suck. They all suck, even the ones I've won. Because you're destroying families when you're talking about winning, because it's battle. It's warfare when you're talking about win-lose terms. If you talk about it in terms of we're going to settle in a way that is good for this family to transition, well, then, that's kind of the win-win kind of argument, or at least an agreement we can live with argument that won't destroy the family kind of suggestion. Well, that kind of leads to a better divorce. Whereas I want to go in there and win and mop the floor with the other side, that will lead to very high legal fees and a whole lot of misery.
And that misery may not end when the marriage ends if you have children.
Of
Correct.
course not. And it gives you the other golden opportunity of misery, which is that you can go back to court and do it some more.
Yeah. I mean, I used to make more money off of my post-judgment litigation than I did off of the prior to judgment litigation. People going back and continuing the fight. I made a whole lot more money off of that.
Now we're really pissed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got a case with really high conflict case. That's a guaranteed income stream for the lawyer for years.
Mm-hmm.
I had a guy call me the other day. His daughter filed a restraining order on him, coached by his ex-wife. And she's going to college next year.
Mm.
He won't mind me sharing this because I'm not sharing his name. He's a really good guy, really nice person, but this is happening. And it's because it was a very terrible divorce when it started. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, the wife was very difficult. But that was a case that I started working on when I was a very green attorney. And now I'm, 20 years into this. He's coming back.
What color are you now?
Weathered
and gray. The husk of the man I once was.
I had a case that I worked for many, many years where every year the couple would come in and fight about who was going to pay for the education of the children for that year. And they literally would come in my office every year from the age of the kids are about 12 or 13, all the way through college. It was like 8 or 10 years of this. And it was candidly, you look at these cases and you're supposed to be neutral, but you can look at what's going on and go, there's a good guy and a bad guy here. I've still got to be neutral. And I've still got to help them solve this. But it was one side that was being unreasonable every year. And yet we had to go through the motions. And we ended up in a very similar place every time at great expense.
I had one where every year I was just passing letters back and forth because they could not speak to each other. And so they paid me my hourly rate to push paper from one side of the table to the other. essentially.
So that's how we can screw up legally getting divorced. How can we screw up emotionally in this process, Scott?
I got an idea, Scott. What do you think?
Well, I have all sorts of ideas, but Shawn, you're so excited with this one.
Oh,
What do you want to say?
so
Go ahead.
whatever you do, don't get a therapist. If you want to have a horrible time and a horrible divorce, please don't get therapy. Make sure that you go into your divorce with all of the problems that got you there in the first place not being resolved. What do you think of that, Scott?
Well, and by the way, for anybody who's new to this podcast, we've had this issue before among the three of us, which is that...
Are you saying we need therapy?
No. The psychology guy is the cynic.
Yes.
Now, I suppose, to be fair, I'm also law trained, but I was like this before that happened.
The law didn't do that to you. That's what attracted you to the law.
No, I'm just like that. I can't help it. Getting a therapist might help, but in my experience, both coaching in collaborative divorce and then, pretty much most of 40 years in the trenches doing this work with couples that are breaking up, among other things, and of course fighting over the children, because the other person is always an evil, horrible thing, and both sides, of course, they're always...
And usually what's happened is you've resolved all the financial issues, so the children are all that's left to fight about.
That's all you have left is the children to fight about.
Well, no, it's so much more elegant than that. They get to fight over the financial issue of the children.
Yes.
You see, they, who's, as you say, every year they're back there for their yearly, it's like a holiday.
We're here.
It's like the finals. They're back in for the finals,
Well, and how well does it work out for folks that try to deal with their emotional struggles by themselves? I mean, you could really, if you play this right, you could let your little emotional struggle in your divorce develop into a full-blown temporary psychosis, couldn't you?
Oh, sure. The reason I'm cynical about the analysis of if you get a therapist, it's going to be better, many times that doesn't even help. I would say in the divorce process itself, one of the things that, frankly, I have learned as much as practitioned, if you will, new verb, in this collaborative thing that we do, is that a coach in real time can, in fact, guide the process to some extent and change the tone and get a foothold for these people into a different kind of experience with each other.
So Scott, can you explain the difference between a coach and a therapist?
I was just going to ask that.
I'm not sure everybody understands that.
All right. The three of us, we three wise men, but we three men of divorce.
You didn't have to laugh there.
The wise guys.
But I did. I couldn't help myself.
The wise guys of divorce.
A therapist out of self-control here. All right. The coach is a person who is, in the collaborative process, a neutral also, although we often have coaches representing each person and helping each person individually. When we get into our collective meetings, everybody really is working for everybody. And if you think about the process of a divorce, and if you sort of stand back and say, okay, ideally, what really would happen? And I haven't lost the fact that we're supposed to talk about how to do it worse, but if you're actually trying to do it better, we stand back and we try to guide this couple in the direction of an outcome that has some stability, where everybody is only as unhappy as they absolutely must be, where there's a fair enough division of property, a fair enough allotment of custody and visitation, a fair enough set of expectations of life going forward, that everybody gets a shot at the best new adjustment to life as is possible.
So can
And
I hire a lifestyle coach? Is that what I'm getting here? Or what am I getting a professional?
you are getting a professional, and you
Okay.
could hire that person as a lifestyle coach, although what that person is doing in a collaborative divorce is really more of what we will call a divorce style coach.
What I'm trying to elicit from you is that these are licensed mental health professionals with credentials
Yes,
that are working in a coaching model rather than doing therapy, but they have a therapy or a mental health background.
yes, yes. All of these people are master's or PhD level licensed people. Um, when you said lifestyle coach, people can't see our faces when they listen to this podcast, but you had that adorable smile on your face, which that's, by the way, folks, that's Mark Hill's kind of cynicism. He gets this quirky little grin going on and says, "Well," and
What
then
about a
he
lifestyle coach?
with that lilting tone. He is a musician, folks. He is a musician. With that lilting tone, he's a, "Could I get a lifestyle coach?" It's almost like, you know, does my butt look good in these whatever?
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, if you want to have a miserable divorce, another way is to get advice from people that aren't qualified.
Oh, that's a really good
Yep.
way.
You know,
Yep.
maybe your brother could talk to you about his divorce and what he did, and you should just try to emulate him, or your friend, you know, or get a life coach who's not qualified. Maybe they're a lovely person, but they're not qualified to help you with your divorce, and just see where that leads you. It'll probably not go well.
I deal with this all the time in practice too, not just
Yeah.
in the divorce. Oh, yes, yes.
So what do you
Well,
see?
every once in a while, I see a truly brilliant, natural person who, you know, it's like they were born for this. And so I don't want to disparage them
You mean
as
the
a group.
coach is brilliant?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. There's some good apples out there, right?
I bump into that, and it's like and frankly, I breathe a sigh of relief, because people who really need help are usually very hungry, and they will latch on to somebody who is reassuring. Now, in our world that we're talking about, in the divorce world, um, there is the specialty of family law, for instance, the specialty of Mark's in doing, I mean, his website, Pacific Divorce. It's like, yes, we know what we are doing in this world. We trained collaborators. We know what we're doing. We know where there be dragons. We can help steer people away from the dragons. Now, a lot of the advice that you're going to get from that person who had a very intense shark of a lawyer and, went for everything. Oh, you got to go with my guy. He kicked ass in our divorce. It's like, well, if you start out trying to kick ass, you might, but you might wind up miserable. And guess what? You may wind up getting your own ass sent to the ass cleaners while you're at it. If you go into it with the intent of, I'm pissed at him and he was a real asshole, and I'm pissed at her and she was a real this, that, and the other. But if we end this thing sensibly, if we're as peaceable as we can be, even though I don't trust him, even though I don't trust her, we can trust a solid agreement made well with guidance. And then I'll be free to start the next part of my life.
Yeah.
And that brings me to what I would say is the major guaranteed way to have a lousy divorce is try to get as much of everything on the financial side as you can. Try to get all the money, all the property, try to get all the income, and see how that works for you.
Well, and hire people to try to help you do that, right?
Right.
Yeah, get a really good shark attorney who's going to go after you, after the other side, and really, really
they're going to
take it
tell
to
you
him.
how they're going to fight for your rights, and they're going to get you what you're entitled to. When you hear words like entitlement and fighting, understand what that is code for. And what is that code for, counselor?
Legal fees.
Thank you.
We're going to get you what you deserve.
All right.
And the thing is, deserve is such a subjective term, and what you think you deserve may not be what a judge thinks you deserve. And so they're deliberately using that subjective term to lure you in. It's very effective marketing, actually, but getting you what you deserve is so subjective, and it's to the point where it's dangerous to even think that way. The best thing to do if you want to have a nice divorce is think about what's a good business decision that's going to make me feel like I can move on. Wouldn't you say?
I think, yeah, being strategic
Uh-huh.
as much as you can and avoiding being emotional
And
as
sometimes,
much as you can.
I mean, you talked about on this podcast before, Mark, you talked about being strategic and being generous to the other side.
You know, it's often what's necessary in order to break the logjam, and then you start to get some of the things you want.
Heaven forbid that should happen. We want to have a miserable divorce here. Why would I get?
That's right. I forget.
Well, I mean, the other part is demanding justice, right? I want justice.
Al Pacino, Justice for All. That's an old movie that probably too young for Shawn. Shawn's too young to remember. But
well, fight over the principle. It's the principle of it.
Oh, that's right. I once, the house I live in now, we had we were lied to by the guy who sold it. It cost me $26,000, which I will never forget, to fix a water leak that he just denied. And he was representing himself. There was no agent, nobody to sue. And so I go to my business attorney and I say, this is just offensive. He knew about this. I knew he knew about this. It's the principle of the matter. She said, oh my God, Mark, please don't sue over principle. We have a broken system. You will win, but it could cost you $100,000 in experts, and you may not get that money back.
I always tell people, principles are expensive.
Yep.
And I'm not saying don't be principled, but sometimes, when it's like the principle of the thing, it's the principle of what was done to you or how you were wronged. I appreciate that. I appreciate not wanting to feel like you've been taken advantage of, but you don't want to lose the war just so you can win a battle over a principle.
Let me give you a perfect example of a case that I worked that is still now in litigation 3 years after a year and a half of trying to co-mediate it with a wonderful other family law attorney in Southern California. We had the case done. Everything was complete. Then we had the issue of husband ensuring support for wife. That's all we had to do, was to retitle a couple of insurance policies so that the money would go to the wife post-divorce. It was the principle to the husband that she was not going to benefit from his death. And the case is still going on. In fact, I got an email asking for some details of work we'd done and how many times I'd met with wife during our thing. So I know that they're heading for court here,
How about this one, guys? Be sure to let your ex know before the divorce is final that you're dating.
Usually good way is through the credit cards that you're still seeing the statements on.
Well, and maybe even throw in a couple of strip clubs in the credit cards, just so that they can see that. And then
big
make
purchase
sure
just before Valentine's Day usually goes well.
Yeah, it's a big, and then make sure that you're kind of public with this person, that you have lots of public displays of affection, and make sure that your ex sees this happen, and your children too.
Bring that person along to court or any settlement conferences. Have them wait in a prominent place to support you.
That's great. And then if it's like the kid's birthday party, bring that person along, because you need a date at the birthday party, don't you?
And anyway, the kids
or the football game,
and the kids need to see this person because it's their new mother or father.
And encourage the children to call this person mother or father. That will really help. Make it a miserable divorce. Why are you sighing, Scott?
I'm just laughing. I'm laughing because I've seen all these things.
Right? We've experienced this, haven't we, guys?
Yeah. And that principle thing is code for payback. It's code for revenge. It's code for yeah.
That's how I felt with my situation. I wanted revenge. He screwed me. I know it.
Yeah.
How can you not see that I'm in the right here?
Oh, that's another one.
Here's another one. Any judge would see me in the right. Any judge. There's no question. I get in front of a judge, I'm guaranteed to win this one.
That's right. This is Otherwise, this is a great miscarriage of justice. And I say to them, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to court and seen miscarriages of justice. And they've either helped me and I've been surprised, and my client, or they've helped the other side and I've been surprised. Miscarriages of justice are part of it. That woman that the statue of the blind lady justice, and she's got the scales.
Yes, right. Yeah.
And the blindfold. It's mythology.
Mm-hmm.
It's an ideal, but the courts don't always. In fact, that's not what they're there for. It's a transaction. They're there to just get you through the door.
I have seen the same judge behave so differently from one day to the next, and you just know they had a miserable morning.
Or it's gastronomical jurisprudence. It depends on what they had for lunch that day.
Yeah.
Or it isn't really blind justice holding the scales. It's kind of like somebody blind on the freeway, there's gonna be a crash, and it's gonna hit the divider, and you don't know if you're gonna win or lose. Why? Because what the law actually captures is not so much what people feel like. What the law actually captures is basic long-term rules that any good lawyer can make your situation seem like it applies here and distinguish there. No, and then the other lawyer is going to argue the other side, and the judge is going to have to make the guess. Whereas if you try to mediate this thing, you can, in sense, stay in much more control of what's going to go on, and you can go for a fair, some kind of middle of the road judgment that serves you, serves the other, serves the kids. And frankly, folks, that's what we do.
I've got one final one from the financial side to guarantee an ugly divorce.
What you got?
Don't disclose an asset that you think they may have forgotten about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
that's lovely.
I don't think she knows about that account I've got in the Cayman Islands. I think we're just not even going to put that down.
Or just think you're smart enough. You're going to be the one guy that was smart enough to hide that asset or that income stream, and think that you're going to be smarter than the army of people the other person's going to hire to figure it out. And the thing I always tell people is, don't try to be cute, because we've seen every trick.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe there's somebody out there that really did trick me.
Well, it's always possible that has occurred. It's always, we don't know what we don't know. But I will say today that it's very hard to hide assets compared to, say, 25 years ago, because everything's tied to a social security number. Anything that pays income has to issue forms that need to be filed, shared with the IRS. So, go back through a few years of tax returns and you're going to find most stuff, unless you've got a high cash business, in which case we got a whole nother can of worms to deal with.
And the other thing about an asset is that assets don't just emerge out of nothing. They come from somewhere. Mm-hmm. And the analysis isn't just of what you have. It's of what you ought to have by virtue of what you had in the first place. If there's an income stream that gets converted into an asset and you see no asset, then you're going to be queried on the income stream. So,
and the other thing I tell people is that if you, I will say, ask both spouses. I mean, I want 3 years of tax returns. Have you changed tax preparers in the last 5 years? I mean, how did that decision come around? Were you both on board with that? Was that, because perhaps we want to look back a little further.
Well, and the other thing I tell people legally is, don't play games, because if you get caught, you could lose that asset.
The lottery winner.
The famous Rossi case here in California, and I'm sure there's similar cases in other jurisdictions, but a lady buys a lottery ticket with community property funds. I think it was like $1, and she bought into a pool at the office or something like that. And lo and behold, she won, got divorced, and never told her husband. Went through the whole thing, signed these declarations of disclosure that we have to do here under penalty of perjury, and never told anybody. And then after the divorce is final, the husband inquires, I guess she's got a nice house and is driving around in a nifty car, and he inquires. Lo and behold, she won the lottery, takes her back to court. And because she committed fraud on her disclosures by not disclosing this, the judge threw the book at her. He awarded the entire lottery winnings to the husband.
And there's a lovely name for that. It's called disgorgement.
Yeah, disgorgement.
Disgorgement.
I just love saying it, disgorge.
It comes right out of your throat, folks.
And I thought you were going to say payback.
Well, there's another case. One of our friends here in San Diego, Sandra Morris, was the judge on this case, and it was the Feldman matter, where this kind of nasty guy had hid a lot of assets, and she had to do a lot of forensic work to find out what he'd hidden, and she found it out, and then he had to pay her a 7-figure attorney's fee award.
Wow.
You know, so the courts take this as serious as a heart attack. So one way to be miserable is to lose all your money because you were a jerk and tried to hide an asset.
Yep.
It's called fraud. Judges don't like fraud.
That's a way to have more than a miserable divorce. You can have a downright miserable life on that one. Yep. That's really special, Shawn.
Oh, yeah, you could commit perjury. People go to jail over it.
Ah, what a great idea.
Actually, they rarely prosecute perjury, but the other stuff they prosecute. I mean, just the financial impact can be devastating. So don't play around with that. Just disclose it and do the right thing.
So do you think we've depressed people enough with how to, or do you think we've encouraged them?
Let's talk about the other side. So this is things not to do, right? You know, hire a shark, make sure it's a really nasty attorney, bring the new ex around all these horrible things that we see done all the time to have a miserable divorce. But there's another way to do it, isn't there?
Yeah. I want to say one more thing about, people here hire a shark and they think to themselves, well, why shouldn't I hire somebody who will go for it as hard as they can? There is a good reason not to. If you think about where divorces are all going to go in one way or another, since it is truly the law, it is the law of the land that a person is entitled to end a marriage. One person can make that decision. If divorce is going to happen, it's going to happen. So all divorces go to a settlement, one way or another. If the judge settles it, okay. But all divorces go to settlement anyway. The default position of the law is to make things come out as evenly as possible anyway. So if you think to yourself, well, what's the most expensive way to get to even? It would be to hire 2 hugely expensive armies of people to fight their way to even. Well, what does that do? At the very worst, it divides the estate into 3, with the largest part going to the battlers, and then some. And if you want the best outcome, you get very good professional guidance, but you stay away from extreme legal events. You stay away from extreme depositions going forever. You stay away from extreme discovery. But you have to work in a situation where you can trust that the representatives are going to get the honest information. And then the settlement you wind up with is probably about where you're going to wind up with anyway.
With lower expenses and much more.
Yeah. And the hatred that emerges in these divorces itself becomes almost like another monster that is then, valid, quote unquote, reason for you to keep fighting horribly because the divorce was so awful.
Here's the good news, though, is that even if you're unhappy with your spouse, I've had people, you don't understand, this person's a narcissist, I can't possibly, even if they're like that, you can reach a settlement that will leave you with more money jingling in your pocket and less emotional pain if you do it the right way.
And it should take less time.
Yeah, it takes less time. You don't have to go to bed worrying about what the other person's going to do next.
It's also just as legally assured because these documents are going to be court insured the same way that your battle would be.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
again, our mantra, and we've said it before here, is think about the story that you want your children to tell about their parents' divorce before you go down any road that turns out to be a cul-de-sac you can't get out of.
Yeah, some people are able to get along really well after the divorce, and some people never speak to each other after the divorce.
Yep.
But you can make
True.
so much worse. But if you want to kind of have that good karma divorce, you just kind of take a higher road. We can do that. And there's ways to do that. And you just have to kind of open your mind to it and be willing to just aim high.
Even if the other person has done awful things.
Right.
In the course of...
Especially when.
Well, yeah. Even in the course of a well-mediated divorce, the mediators are going to make a lot of those shenanigans almost impossible.
Yeah. I used to tell people when I did litigated custody cases, is the trick to winning a custody battle is to aim high, is to take the high road. You come in the low road and you're just bad mouthing the other person in court all the time, the judge is going to slap you because they're going to be pissed off at you. But if you want to have, a good relationship with your children, aim high. I sound like Michelle Obama.
Isn't that a matter of public policy, though?
Yes.
That the idea is that both parents, the judges, have this awareness and this underlying need to make sure that both parents have access to children, unless it's incredibly extreme. There's been abuse.
It has to be really extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the public policy is both parents get access.
But you don't understand. I have to expose him.
Yeah, I get that too.
I have to show the world what she is.
I think that people don't imagine the power of the law in its commitment to parents having visitation.
Yeah, that's very true.
The
even the narcissist or the borderline or the crazy person.
Oh no. Let's go further.
Or the alcoholic and the drug addict.
No, we're not there yet. Convicted criminals in prisons get visitation.
You betcha.
They get visitation. Convicted criminals in prison.
And here's the thing that
happens. So once you know that,
if a judge sees your very negative pleadings and hears your very negative testimony, he's not going to like you very much.
He's certainly going to suspect
you're right.
But he doesn't need to like me. He just needs to see I'm right, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he won't. He's going to actually see that you're a horrible person. That's what he's going to think. And what happens is, it's like political campaigns. When they do negative ads, the approval ratings of the person that the negative ads are supposed to help actually go down. And this is something that political scientists know. And that happens in court. If all of your pleadings are just negative diatribes about how horrible the other person is, your stock will drop 10 points with the judge.
And judges have an awful lot of latitude in family that they don't necessarily have in other types of law. And people don't understand that because they may have experience of other parts of law where things are far more set and outcomes are not as gray, and judges don't have as much latitude as they have in family.
So, to quote Michelle Obama, they go low, we go high.
Yep.
Not that we're taking a position.
No.
But we would like to take a position to help people.
Yeah, I definitely want people to have a happier divorce. But, if you insist on a miserable divorce, I hope we've given you a lot of good tips.
We've given them lots
on how to do
tips.
that. I kind of joke with people. I don't know how to save a marriage, but I sure know how to ruin one.
Well, it looks like we've done another podcast, gentlemen.
We've met again.
And these people that listen to us, I really appreciate you. Maybe you guys have some ideas for how to have a miserable divorce that you'll share on our comments.
Yeah, or some questions that you'd like us to address on a future podcast.
Yeah, if there's a zone of this general discussion about divorce that you would like to see us address, say so.
Yep.
We love your feedback, and we know we have people listening to us. I saw the other day that we have people in Spain listening to us.
Muy bien.
And we have people in France listening to us.
Les Français aussi, oh mon Dieu.
And we have people in Great Britain listening.
I can speak English, though you guys can't.
Yes, we can.
I'll translate for you if you need it.
That's
We
so
love it.
lovely.
We love that we have ears out there that are listening to us and like what we're talking about. And if you like what we're talking about, please let us know, and let us know what we can do to make it even better.
Absolutely.
So Scott,
Yes, sir.
people want to call you for some divorce coaching.
If they would like to do that, my last name is Weiner, Scott Weiner, Weiner. My office is in Solana Beach, California. I work in these Zoom days. I work over Zoom quite a bit, actually. But otherwise, people visit me in my office, and we start out typically with a telephone consultation where I meet them over the phone and they decide if they can put up with me or not. And they call me at 619-417-5743. Scott Weiner, psychologist, California. And Mark
Hill, financial divorce consultant. My company is Pacific Divorce Management. We're based in Sorrento Valley, San Diego. Best way to contact me is to start at my website, pacdivorce.com, PACDIVORCE.com, all one word.
And if you have a legal dispute that needs resolving, go to my website, WeberDisputeResolution.com. WeberDisputeResolution.com. That's Weber with one B. And we can help you resolve your legal dispute peacefully through mediation and other processes. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Three Wise Men of Divorce: Money, Psych, and Law. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share with others who may be in a similar place. Until next time, stay safe, healthy, and focused on a positive, bright future. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Every family law case is unique, so no legal, financial, or mental health advice is intended during this podcast. If you need help with your specific situation, feel free to schedule a time to speak with one of us for a personal consultation.